Sofia, the capital of Bulgaria. With a history that spans thousands of years from antiquity to modern times, Sofia is a city that's been occupied by the Romans, the Greeks, the Ottomans, and also became a satellite state of the Soviet Union post-World War II, living behind the Iron Curtain for almost 45 years. It's a city of almost 1.3 million people, located in the center of the Balkan Peninsula, perfectly sandwiched midway between the Black Sea and the Adriatic. And it's now gaining more global popularity, in particular with drawing in digital nomads and expats looking for an all-around affordable lifestyle, strong internet connections, a thriving cultural and nightlife scene, a great cafe.
Hey travel buds, welcome to Where's YaYa? To the most beautiful person in the world, hey grandma, and to my very sweet journey, and the most amazing, smartest, and most handsome nephew ever. Hey JD Wadey, YaYa loves you and misses you so much. I want to share a little piece of my heart with you guys. My grandmother, who is truly my best friend, she has been through so much in her life. She's a survivor and a warrior, living with polio and continuing to beat the odds every single day. Even though she can't always travel with me, I want her to see and experience the world as if she's walking right beside me. These videos are a way for her and anyone who may not be able to travel to feel the joy and excitement of exploring new places. Growing up, I didn't always have the chance to travel or see much of the world, and it wasn't until I finally got out there that my whole mindset changed. I realized how big and beautiful and diverse this planet really is. And now my mission is just to share that sense of wonder with all of you. This channel is for everyone, young and old, to come along on my journey. I want to show you what the world looks like in real time with no fancy filters and overly edited moments. If you have a place that you want to check out or you want me to explore, leave a comment below or find me on Instagram. I love hearing your suggestions. I may not be the best editor out there, but I promise you that every video is packed with love and just a true genuineness, and it's authentic and it's with an open heart. My goal is to visit every single country on this planet, and I can't wait to bring you along for the ride. Thank you for being here. It truly means the world to me. I hope you enjoy watching this as much as I enjoy recording it. As one of the oldest countries in Europe, Bulgaria offers rich history and a diverse culture. This is Jacques from Where's YaYa, and I just want to say a few things that I wish I would have known before I came to Bulgaria. Now, first, I would say the best time to visit. Spring from March to May, especially if you want to do some of the outdoor activities and sightseeing throughout the city. Summer is ideal if you want to experience the beach, along the Black Sea coast. A lot of people like to go through the warmer months of July, August. Now, September through October is really great because it's harvest season, and a lot of people like to do the wine tours. Now, if you like the cold, then skiing in the mountains and all of that good stuff, I would say January is some of the best times to travel. Now, one of the most common ways to get there, of course, is flying into the major airport. Sofia is the largest airport, and it does serve into the other international gateways. Now, there are other airports that can connect you to nearby destinations and places in Europe, but that's what I did. Now, you can do the train, which connects you to Romania, Serbia, and Greece. And it's really great because it does offer scenic views, and you can just be careful and safe. And it's really beautiful. Now, if you do have transportation or want to drive, you can also drive like Romania, Serbia, and Greece. You will have to kind of worry about tolls and permits. Now, once you get to Bulgaria and you're in there, it's so many different ways to get around. There's an extensive bus system with intercity bus systems that connect you all around town, but the train definitely connects you as well. When you're in Sofia, you can use the metro systems. It's pretty cheap and affordable. Now, renting a car is a popular option for those who want to explore. But you also can do ride sharing apps like Uber and Bolt. Bulgaria is affordable overall, but I would say like knowing the prices before you go is really beneficial. You can get like budget hotels. Budget hotels is really great because they're affordable. I didn't have to do that, unfortunately. Well, not unfortunately, because I'm so glad that I didn't. And also, depending on how you travel, I was so blessed to already have a place for me instead of having to do that. I think some places you can do like room sharing, basically per bed. It's like $10 to $30 per bed. It's not my thing, but it is an option. Now, they do have luxury hotel rooms, especially in the touristy areas. Typically, they start around $150 to $180 per night. So that's not too bad if that's what you want to do. Now, when it comes to food, they had so many options and so many pastry places, and it was so cool. You can go to the local restaurants. That's about $5 to $10 per night. But then a 3-course meal for 2 people costed us about $20 to $60, which was really great because compared to, Eastern Union, they were one of the most affordable ways, one of the most affordable places that I've been to in the area. So the food wasn't so bad. Now, if you do feel like you overspent with some of the accommodations, there are other ways that you can save money, and that includes like catching the train. However, what I would say, if you're going to go to more than one place, I would just kind of say budget. If you're a solo traveler, I would budget differently than I would do if I was traveling with someone, because for me, safety is really important. So I would rather spend the money on the hotel and be safe and eat super cheap food than spend the money on food and everything else and live in kind of unknown areas, but that's just my preference. A lot of people feel like the train is the best way to save money, but I'm just going to say, hey, keep in mind safety because you just don't know when you don't know. Now, you can take the buses instead of taxis and eat like locals because though that is something that's like super affordable. Now, if you are visiting from the UK or other European destinations, you can get some great packages with your traveling that can include the meals, but just one of those things. I did notice that some of the better deals tend to come up off season, but just be mindful and check that out. Now, one of the cool things that I felt like I just had to do was visit Sofia. It's the capital and it's home to the cathedral, the National Palace of Culture, and the ancient ruins of Srebrenica. And it was so many other things like the World Heritage Sites that's known for its stunning architecture and beautiful mounting settings. That was really great. Another thing is the places around the Black Sea coast, basically the beaches, they're so beautiful. You must see. Now, as you know, around here, there are a lot of places that's kind of like Roman inspired, so you'll always enjoy the architecture there. Hey guys, so if you stay tuned, if you are interested in learning a little bit more about Sofia and Bulgaria and some just like some history behind it, stay tuned because towards this end, you're going to just have like a whole history lesson. I was able to find some information about it. I got some help from someone and they sent me this over and I think it was like really cool. But yeah, stay tuned. And if you are ending now, thank you so much for tuning in to Where's YaYa by D. Jacques Allen. I really appreciate you guys. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment to just let me know where are you listening from. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Легенди в сърцата ни горят. От седемте рилски езера до морето синьо. Ти си магията, която свързва ни във вино. България, страна на чудеса и смях. Твоите поля и гори, приказен пейзаж. От Пловдив до Шипка, духът ти живее. Ти си нашето вдъхновение. България, страна на чудеса и смях. Твоите поля и гори, приказен пейзаж. От Пловдив до Шипка духът ти живее. Ти си нашето вдъхновение, нашата светлина се пее. Долината на розите, аромат се носи. Тракийски съкровища блестят под слънце и звезди. Варна и Несебър, крайбрежни чудеса. На Папорово върховете снежни пеят песни на зората. България, земя на приказки стари. Твоите легенди в сърцата ни горят. От седемте рилски езера до морето синьо. Ти си магията, която свързва ни във вино. България, страна на чудеса и смях. Твоите поля и гори, приказен пейзаж. От Пловдив до Шипка духът ти живее. Ти си нашето вдъхновение, нашата светлина се пее. България, страна на чудеса и смях. Твоите поля и гори, приказен пейзаж. От Пловдив до Шипка духът ти живее. Ти си нашето вдъхновение, нашата светлина се пее.
Eternally divided, the multitude of Thracian tribes would occasionally unite when faced with a greater external threat. They were not renowned as great city builders, and their neighbors considered them barbarians. However, all held them in high regard for their fighting skills, and they were highly prized as mercenaries. To defend their homeland, they built a dense network of hill forts and fortified towns that made their land difficult to dominate by foreigners, or themselves. In the early 5th century BC, Thrace lost its independence to the massive Persian Empire for a few decades. After a disastrous campaign in Greece, the Persian Empire ultimately decided to abandon its ambitions in Europe. In the aftermath of the Persian withdrawal, the Odrysian tribe managed to fill the power vacuum in the region. They consolidated their control over many of the other Thracian tribes and petty kingdoms to form the first large state we know of in the Balkan Mountain region. The Odrysian kingdom enjoyed half a century of unity, growth, and prosperity, before devolving into civil war, intertribal rivalries, and ultimately, after a short resurgence, competing monarchies. Philip, the king of Thrace's longtime rival, Macedon, took advantage of the situation and subdued Thrace. His son Alexander employed a great number of Thracians in his army that conquered the massive Persian Empire, which was quite the great accomplishment. Then, Alexander died from too much winning. In the succeeding period of chaos that followed his death, many of his successor states employed Thracian mercenaries to great effect. In Thrace, various puppet states were controlled by Alexander's successors, with the exception of the Getic kingdom, which asserted its independence. During the 3rd century, Celts from the north ravaged Thrace. They set up shop there and extorted money from the Thracian tribes, before being kicked out eventually. After the Thracians reasserted their independence, they enjoyed a brief respite. Then, in the early 2nd century, the Romans showed up. By 168 BC, they had conquered Macedon and subdued Thrace, making it a vassal and then client kingdom. After rebellion and unrest swept through the kingdom, Rome fully annexed the territory in 46 AD. Under Roman rule, the Thracians retained their warlike character. Many thousands joined the Roman auxilia. Those that survived a 25-year term of service became Roman citizens, which greatly sped up the Romanization of the province. Traditional Thracian culture was still practiced in remote mountain areas for several centuries. Over time, there were many prominent Roman generals and even emperors who were of Thracian descent. Most of the Thracians' cousins north of the Danube, the Getae and the Dacians, also fell under Roman rule after multiple brutal wars. The following period of stability and prosperity came to an end in the 3rd century, when the region became overrun with Gothic tribes, who were being pushed south by the invading Huns from the east. The Roman army abandoned Dacia, and the lands south of the Danube were subjected to raids of ever-increasing frequency. After the Gothic incursions, the Romans came into direct conflict with the Huns, who repeatedly ravaged the borderlands of the empire, especially during the 19-year reign of Attila the Hun. After his death, the Hunnic Empire collapsed. The Huns were followed by other migrating peoples, notably the Gepids, Alans, and Avars, who also raided Roman territory. As you might imagine, all this raiding left much of the region depopulated. During these chaotic times, Slavic tribes were dislodged from their original homelands, somewhere to the north. Exactly where that was is a matter of intense scholarly debate. Many tribes moved far to the south. These people have been collectively called the South Slavs. They amalgamated with the surviving Romanized Illyrians and Thracians. The Avars, who were initially hired by the Eastern Romans to subdue the other barbarian tribes north of their border, were so successful that they turned on the Romans and began extorting money from them. And when they didn't pay, the Avars paid themselves by raiding Roman territory. Meanwhile, the Eastern Romans were preoccupied with wars with the Sassanid Persian Empire, while their northern border eroded. The Romans were not the only ones with more on their plate than they could handle. The Avars' easternmost vassal, the Turkic-speaking Bulgars, rebelled and quickly established a powerful khanate, Old Great Bulgaria. Old Great Bulgaria never got to grow very old, and did not last a great deal of time. The old Khan that established the realm gave his 5 sons the good advice of sticking together after he died, so they would be stronger when faced with enemies. And like with many sons, that good advice went into one ear and out the other. When another Turkic tribe, the Khazars, moved to subjugate their territory, the 4 younger brothers didn't stick around long and took off in different directions. One brother and his people went far to the north and established a kingdom on the Volga River that would last for more than 500 years until it was destroyed by the Mongols in the 13th century. Another brother ended up all the way in Italy and enlisted his tribe's services to the Germanic Lombards, who had previously set up shop there. In a little more than a century, the smaller tribe assimilated into the local population. Yet another brother settled among the Avars, rebelled, freed some slaves, and settled south. There he established a short-lived Roman vassal state that disappears from the pages of history not long after. The final brother in his tribe migrated along the Black Sea coast. There, the Bulgars encountered a union of 7 Slavic tribes that had banded together in mutual defense against the Bulgars' old enemy, the Avars, as well as the Roman Empire. The Bulgars and the Slavs got along famously. Not long after they met, they soundly defeated a larger Roman army. The next year, peace on favorable terms was negotiated with the Romans, and a new Bulgarian state was established. In contrast to many other highly mobile nomadic peoples that had come and gone in the region, the Bulgars demonstrated an almost immediate desire to entrench themselves and defend their new homeland. Together with their Slavic allies, they built multiple layers of defensive works. Initially, these were very simple, crude trenches and earthenworks, but would become increasingly elaborate over time, making the territory a giant fortress. After Bulgaria's first Khan, Asparuch, died, his son Tervel succeeded him. It was during his reign that the fugitive deposed Roman Emperor, Justinian II, showed up in the Bulgars' land. He promised the Bulgars just about everything and anything in exchange for their support in restoring his throne in Constantinople. Tervel and 15,000 of his horsemen rode to Constantinople. There, Justinian II was restored to his throne after encountering mild resistance. In exchange for his aid, Tervel received a big old pile of money and many titles, including Caesar, which was the first time a Roman emperor would bestow that title on a foreigner. Justinian's gratitude did not last very long. 3 years later, he invaded Bulgaria, probably wanting some of his money back, and was soundly beaten. Tervel raided Roman lands for a couple of years, until a peace treaty was negotiated with the new emperor. The Romans agreed to give Tervel gold each year, in exchange for peace and friendship. As promised, the Romans sent gold. 1 year later, the Romans contacted the Bulgarians, saying something to the effect of, "So, hey, new best and possibly only friend in the whole world, there's a huge army coming to invade us, can you help?" Both Arab and Roman sources state that the army was well over 100,000 men strong. After the Romans successfully disrupted the Arab supply lines, and an unusually severe winter, hunger and disease ravaged the besieging force. Then, the Bulgars were able to decisively defeat the much larger Arab army and break the siege. Tervel ended his reign on peaceful terms with the Romans, and his country was far more strong, wealthy, and prestigious than when his reign had begun. Following Tervel's reign was more than 3 decades of relative peace and stability. Then, for 5 decades, the Romans and Bulgars waged a long series of largely inconclusive wars with each other. Little territory changed hands, and peace treaties were frequently made and quickly broken. In 803 AD, Khan Krum came to the throne. He took a break from fighting with the Romans and turned north to face the Bulgars' old adversary, the Avars. Within 2 years, the Avar Khanate was essentially destroyed. Then, Krum turned south into Roman territory. The Roman Emperor Nikephoros counterattacked, defeated Krum's army, and sacked the Bulgarian capital. Krum was able to exact his revenge a short while later. He bolstered the remnants of his army by arming every peasant he could find. Then, Krum ambushed the Roman army as it returned home. The Romans were defeated and the emperor slain, and Krum ordered that the emperor's skull be made into a cup as a trophy. Krum then successfully campaigned against the Romans for 3 years, and started gathering a large army and siege equipment for a planned siege on Constantinople. Then, he died unexpectedly, and the Bulgars made peace with the Romans, which uncharacteristically lasted for more than 20 years, and then they started fighting again. During the reign of Presian, Bulgar territory was greatly expanded to the southwest. Expansion to the west was stopped by Serbian tribes that united to defeat the Bulgars. By the middle of the 9th century, the north of the empire came under pressure from the Magyars. When Boris came to the throne, he inherited an empire that was overextended and surrounded by enemies. Internally, the empire was divided as well. The pagan Bulgar ruling class was increasingly at odds with a majority Slavic population that was slowly but steadily converting to Christianity. The Bulgars viewed this as a threat because they believed that Christians would potentially have secret loyalties, either to the Eastern Romans or the Pope in Rome. Early in his reign, Boris defeated foreign invasions, weathered a series of plagues and natural disasters, and then converted to Christianity. When Boris outlawed paganism and compelled the Bulgar nobles to get baptized, many broke out in open revolt, which was quickly crushed. Boris established an independent Bulgarian Orthodox Church. Latin or Greek would not be used, but the Slavic tongue the largest group of his subjects spoke. Boris was determined to unite his land with one official church, one language, and one people under one monarch. To facilitate this, he needed one written script. 2 brothers, Methodius and Cyril, who were missionaries in the empire, devised a written script for the Slavic language, now called Cyrillic, after Cyril. The Bulgarian Empire opened schools where thousands learned the new written script. Not long after, missionaries would spread the Cyrillic alphabet far beyond the empire's borders among other Slavic-speaking peoples. Today, Cyrillic is used from Vladivostok to the shores of the Mediterranean. When Boris accomplished all he set out to do, he retired, wishing to spend the rest of his days peacefully in a monastery. Though he overlooked one minor detail, his son, who thought it was a swell idea to bring paganism back. Boris begrudgingly left his monastery, rallied an army to his cause, and defeated his son. Boris couldn't bring himself to kill his son, so he had his eyes gouged out. Boris then appointed his son Simeon, who was studying to be a cleric in the church, as his heir, and retired again to the monastery, only to come out of retirement again 2 years later to help his son fight off a joint Byzantine-Magyar alliance against the empire. Then he retired for a third and final time. and died 2 years later. Simeon waged further successful campaigns against the Byzantines. Despite his reign's initial rough start, the remainder of Simeon's rule was a golden age of culture, literature, and architecture, which was partially funded by the Romans, who paid the Bulgarians an annual tribute. After Simeon's reign, the empire began a slow decline. The Serbs successfully revolted, the Magyars and the Rus raided from the north, and the Romans stopped paying tribute. During the reign of Samuel, the empire had a resurgence, and then everything fell apart. The Roman emperor, Basil the Bulgar Slayer. To oversummarize, he slayed some Bulgars, and he slayed them until there was no Bulgaria left. For more than a century, the Romans ruled the land south of the Danube River again. Initially, the Romans were surprisingly tolerant of their old enemy. Pre-existing laws, tax system, and minor nobility were kept in place. Then, over the decades, the region was increasingly taxed more and more heavily, and Roman rule gradually became more direct. This led to a long series of failed revolts, until one succeeded. Two of the revolt's ringleaders were wealthy but common herdsmen. They became co-emperors of the resurrected Bulgarian state. One of their younger brothers succeeded both as emperor. His name was Kaloyan the Roman Slayer. And as you might expect, he had some minor disagreements and border clashes with the Romans. Then, a fearsome fanatical flotilla of frustrated Franks forayed forth on the failed Fourth Crusade. Forgetting Jerusalem, the cantankerous Catholic crusaders cunningly captured Constantinople instead. Kaloyan waged war on the new empire to his south. He captured the braggadocious bandit Baldwin, who had made himself emperor of the new Latin Empire. The Latin Empire is a modern term. At the time, the crusading corsairs continued to call the empire they had captured Roman. Kaloyan also called them Romans. Hence, after the rampage he went on, conquering and killing crusader civilians, Catholic or otherwise alike, he called all the dead Romans, hence the Roman Slayer. Then, the Roman Slayer was slayed during a siege, or died from sickness, accounts vary. During the reign of his successor, Bulgaria lost territory, and was plagued with internal uprising. Ivan Anson II seized the throne after successfully uprising. He expanded the Second Bulgarian Empire to the height of its power and prestige. The Bulgarian capital city of Tarnovo became a prominent economic and religious center during his reign, filling some of the vacuum left by the ransacked Constantinople. And the city during this time has been referred to as a Third Rome or Second Constantinople. The year after Ivan's death, his golden age also came to an end. The Mongol horde came to town and ransacked the place, and exacted a yearly tribute afterwards. The Mongols also involved themselves in influencing Bulgarian politics. To make matters worse, there were invasions from Serbians, Hungarians, and a revived Roman Empire, motivated to recover its lost territory. After it had kicked the Crusaders out, at the beginning of the 14th century, Mongol influence was crushed, and things began to look like they were on a way to a full recovery. Then, the Serbs killed the Bulgarian Tsar in battle. The Black Death swept through the country, religious strife ensued, and by the later 14th century, there were 3 rival Tsars in Bulgaria. This was the situation when the Ottoman Turks arrived in Europe. The exhausted squabbling remnants of the once mighty Bulgarian Empire were torn apart piece by piece. Bulgaria would remain part of the Ottoman Empire for nearly 500 years. During all that time, Bulgarian religion, culture, and history were preserved through the written word. Every century of Ottoman rule had at least one major uprising in Bulgaria. In 1774, the rising power of Imperial Russia promised to protect the Bulgarians if Christians were ever threatened in the Balkans. A century later, in 1875, the Ottomans severely dealt with another Bulgarian uprising. Tens of thousands of Bulgarian militants and civilians were massacred in the uprising and its aftermath. Russia was horrified to hear of the events in the Balkans. In response, they invaded with an army 260,000 strong. More than 200,000 men died on all sides from battle and disease. In the treaties ending the conflict, 2 semi-autonomous Bulgarian states were established, which were later united in 1885. In 1908, when Turkey was busy with internal upheaval, the Bulgarians declared their independence, and the Kingdom of Bulgaria was established. In order to survive, the Third Bulgarian state had to be heavily militarized, and it would earn the nickname the Balkan Prussia. A couple years later, when the Ottomans had their own internal business more or less straightened out, they went to war against a united Balkan front of 4 countries. The Ottomans lost. Bulgaria achieved large territorial gains, but those gains were not quite enough for Bulgaria's aggressive Tsar Ferdinand. So, he waged war on a couple of his former allies to get a little more land. In response, everybody, including the Ottomans, ganged up on Bulgaria. Consequently, the short bloody war was over in 5 weeks, with Bulgaria losing a great deal of territory and men. During the Great War to end all wars, the Kingdom of Bulgaria allied with Germany. This was primarily motivated to expand its territory it had lost in the Balkan Wars, and get some extra land too. Many Bulgarian soldiers were upset that they were allied with the Ottomans, against a fellow Slavic Orthodox Christian country that had previously helped them in their time of need. After revolution broke out in Russia, many Bulgarian soldiers were inspired to remove their own Tsar and mutinied. In response, Bulgaria ended its involvement in the war. The Tsar abdicated, his son took over, and minor reforms were made. Following the war, Bulgaria was forced to cede territory and pay reparations. In the sequel to that conflict, Bulgaria allied with Germany again, and that didn't turn out well again. In September 1944, a coup d'etat brought in a pro-Soviet government, days after the Red Army crossed their border. Bulgaria then promptly switched sides and declared war on Germany. In 1946, the monarchy was disestablished, and the People's Republic of Bulgaria was formed. Forced labor camps, as well as ethnic and religious repression, were commonplace, especially during the early years of the new regime. During the 35 years Todor Zhivkov was the de facto leader of Bulgaria, he oversaw a long, relatively stable period of economic growth, and the gradual liberalization of the authoritarian country, where dissent was severely dealt with. He resigned in 1989 after widespread mass protests. Following his resignation, the Communist Party quickly collapsed within a month. The following year, the Bulgarian Republic was established. Fun fact, after the fall of communism, Bulgaria's last king, Simeon, became its prime minister 60 years after he was dethroned. If you are from Bulgaria, I would be interested to know what you think of Zhivkov. Was he a good guy, bad guy, or somewhere in between? Also, if you are from there or have visited, what is your favorite thing to eat or drink in Bulgaria? What is your favorite place to visit? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you have to say. This has been Epimetheus. A big thanks to my patrons who help make videos like this possible.